It's been 6 months since Michael passed. The grief lingered like morning fog that never quite lifted. But life didn't pause. Bills stacked up, the house demanded care, and the property felt heavier by the day. One thing kept pressing on my mind, the garage. Michael's garage. It was larger than life, just like him, and he used it more than he used the living room. It was his haven, his workshop, his world. But since the funeral, it stood still and silent, untouched. People were interested in buying it. The location was prime, and the size was appealing. I understood the logic. But logic doesn't carry emotion, and emotionally, I wasn't ready. Still, I knew I had to go through his things, sort them out, figure out what stayed and what could go. I brought a flashlight, even though daylight flooded the yard. That garage always held shadows, like time moved differently in there. As I unlocked the door with the old rusty key, the scent hit me. Engine grease, sawdust, old metal. It was like stepping into a sealed memory. Everything was as he left it. Tools aligned with precision, his favorite stool by the workbench, even his coffee mug, stained and still half full, like he'd be back in a minute. I sat on his stool, just listening to the silence. It didn't feel right to disturb any of it. I boxed a few things, labeled items for donation, and kept what held stories. But something kept pulling me toward the back of the garage. One panel of the wall was different, painted over, while everything else was raw wood. It never stood out to me before. I walked to it and knocked. Hollow. That wasn't right. I ran my fingers along the edges and found a groove, a barely there seam. Pressing lightly, the panel opened with a low creak. Behind was a narrow, dark space. I flicked on my flashlight. Dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts. The room was the size of a walk-in closet, with shelves, a desk, and boxes. A hidden room. The temperature dropped in there, colder, heavier somehow. I stepped in, heart thudding. The files on the shelves weren't just manuals or business papers. They were labeled with unfamiliar names, dates, strange codes. Some locked in metal boxes, others tied with fraying twine. I opened a box. Photographs, hundreds, grainy shots taken from a distance. Cars, people walking into buildings, kids at playgrounds. Each one chilling in its own quiet way. On the back of one photo, Michael's handwriting. To confirm drop, that's when the pit formed in my stomach. The sketches, maps, receipts, they all pointed to something bigger. Hidden in this dusty little space was evidence of what I wasn't sure yet. Then I found an envelope marked for someone named Devin. Inside was a letter. If something happens to me, it began, everything is documented. He wrote that he'd been investigating a group trafficking illegal weapons, posing as a restoration business downtown. He stumbled onto them by accident, trying to buy vintage parts. One crate didn't match. It was too heavy. Inside, rifles. He went to the police once. They dismissed him, called him paranoid. So he did what Michael always did. He got to work. He spent years gathering proof. Quietly, carefully, alone, I found entry after entry. His words shifted from determined to frightened. In the final weeks, they became panicked. He believed they were on to him. His final note, they know, if I disappear, it wasn't an accident. I sat there for hours, frozen, thinking back to his death. A heart attack. They said, no autopsy, no red flags. I hadn't questioned it. Not then, but now. Everything I buried came rushing up. I took the files to the police again. This time, I had too much for them to ignore. Photos, names, maps, audio recordings. An investigation opened. A week later, they arrested Eric Dolman, Michael's former partner, and 4 others. Guns, cash, forged documents, drugs. The bust made headlines. But none of it brought Michael back. I still walk to that garage some nights. I sit on his stool and talk to him. Tell him what happened. Tell him they listened. Tell him he was right. Selling the garage? I couldn't. Not anymore. I decided to turn it into something better. A community workshop. A space where kids could learn mechanics, where neighbors could build things, where hands stayed busy and minds stayed curious, just like his. And maybe one day, If someone walks in and asks about the man who used to work there, I'll smile, and I'll say, "Let me tell you about Michael." Because he wasn't just my husband. He was a quiet hero, and the garage he left behind was full of truth he refused to bury.